was there's zero representation of trucking on workforce boards in Oregon?
Correct. I mean, it
Wow.
was kind of a, it's, so you have your main sectors. Like you're always going to find healthcare. That's a given. You're going to find a healthcare represent. That's going to be one of the supported and main sectors on almost all workforce boards. So then you're probably going to, a lot of them tend to, go with IT.
Mhm.
You'll see a lot of construction and manufacturing, but very few of them have actually put transportation as a supported main sector. Now that agenda is starting to change. I mean, it's just because people like me getting involved.
We are super excited to have Andy Owens on the show today. And Andy and I got connected because Andy's doing a lot of really great work in the state of Oregon with workforce boards. And they have secured a lot of funding for trucking, and are really making a difference in the transportation sector for the state of Oregon. Andy, thanks for being on the show, and give us a background of who you are, how you got started in trucking, and what your company does.
Well, hi, Lindsey. Thanks for having me on today. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. And actually, we get to share this story now with the world. So that's kind of a cool opportunity because when you start talking workforce, that is, I've drank the Kool-Aid for the workforce system, and I love to share it, tell the story, and try to get more people engaged. So um, the elevator chat is back in 1972, my dad bought our first truck, and I was a sophomore in high school then. So do the math. I'm kind of an old guy. That's why all the gray hair. Um, but that's where we got started. And I've been going to college for some time, and I decided in 1979 that I'd come back and work with my dad and build a company, and that's what we've done. And so we're a family-owned company. We're A&M Transport, based out of Glendale, Oregon. We're 120 trucks, just a general over-the-road common, general commodity carrier, and just kind of work up and down the I-5 corridor throughout Oregon, Washington, California. But we experience the same issues that everyone does nationwide as it relates to driver shortages and what have you. In 2015, I got involved in the workforce system, and had a county commissioner that I knew real well just walked into my office one day and said, "Hey, I need you on this board. It's workforce." And I'm like, I like this gal, this county commissioner, and I trusted her. I said, "Oh, okay, Susan, I'm in." I'll tell you honestly, it took me a year and a half to figure out what was the workforce system, because you just don't hear about it. But once I got my teeth sunk into this thing and discovered what it could do, I'm like, this is the real deal. We need more people involved in it. And so that's kind of been my my goal throughout, since 2015 till now, and particularly through the Oregon Trucking Association. I just recently completed a 3-year term of chairing that organization. But one of my main goals was to get a transportation representative on all 9 of the workforce areas in Oregon,
Hmm.
so that trucking was getting their fair share of government funds for CDL training. And to date, we have 8. We don't have the very far side, the east side of Oregon covered yet, and we don't have a volunteer to fill that role. But we have 8 of the 9 workforce areas in Oregon with a transportation representative sitting on the board, or heavily engaged with it, and it's really starting to pay its dividends now. So
That's awesome. So, to somebody who wants to, they really don't know what a workforce board is. They're like, I kind of heard of it, but I don't really know what it is. Tell us, what is a workforce board?
So the workforce system, it was originally called Workforce Development and Investment Boards, created in Bill Clinton's very first term of being president, and it was an act that Congress put into play. And Basically, what the bill said was that every square foot of territory controlled by the United States of America would have a workforce system and workforce board overseeing it. And what those workforce boards would do would be to, in an area, in their workforce, particular workforce area. So let's back up and talk about how they split the states up. So, like I mentioned earlier, Oregon has 9 workforce
Mhm.
areas, and they're sometimes they will be a single county, but most of the time they're multiple counties and they're contiguous. In other
Okay.
words, they all connect, and they have like-minded people, like, and industries that kind of relate. So the workforce board for that particular workforce area, whether it's a single county or multiple counties, they will determine the important industry sectors in their area,
Mhm.
and then they determine how they want to direct WIOA funds into that workforce area, clear down to your um, employment offices, work source offices, different states name them different things. But when someone's looking for a job, they go in and there's money to train them and help get them into an industry. It's normally WIOA funds that do it. And WIOA, WIOA,
Mhm.
Workforce Innovative Opportunity Act. That's the acronym. That's the explanation on it. But anyway, back to where I was going with this is like every square foot of territory in the U.S. has a workforce board over the top of it, um, determining what sectors they want to support, what industries they want to support, and then directing funding to training to try to help support those particular industries. And that's why I've mentioned to you, Lindsey, several times that I think that it's important that people um, get involved in their local workforce systems, because that's really where that's the foundation of the whole workforce system in the United States, and the funding, how it comes through and gets people trained to come back into the industry. um, the process for getting getting appointed to a workforce board, the makeup of the workforce board is kind of interesting. By law, a workforce board has to be made up of a minimum of 51% private industry representation.
Hmm.
So it can't just be packed full of a bunch of government agencies, because you'll find presidents of like prominent colleges, maybe large high schools, people
Mhm.
from the workforce system.
Mhm.
I mean, there can be a makeup, a hodgepodge makeup of public officials. A county commissioner normally will sit on your board, but they'll be involved. But then you're supposed to go out and find at least 51% of your membership, board membership needs to be private industry representation. And that just makes sure the industry is getting a fair shake
Mhm.
and a fair say on how these, on what gets developed within your workforce system. But the way you get appointed, it normally takes a nomination from a prominent business organization, say like your Chamber of Commerce.
Mhm.
So what will happen is if um, the executive director of your workforce area determines that they need more board members, he or she will go to a prominent, will most likely notify the county commissioners, but then they'll contact like the chamber or something like that, and they'll do an assessment of what they need, what sectors they may need representation in, and they'll go out and they'll try to find someone to fill that spot. So then the chamber would nominate this individual up to the county commissioners, and they would vote and then get this person officially seated on that workforce board. So it's it takes a little bit of work sometimes. We've had, like I mentioned, we've got 8 transportation representatives on the boards here in Oregon,
That's
and
great.
there were a couple of the seats that matter making a phone call to the executive director, and I mean they just fast tracked it, and boom, and within a week or so, this individual was an official member of that board.
Mhm.
We've had some that have taken 3 or 4 months and a lot of politicking, and I tell you, quite frankly, I've gotten a little bit. I had to get a little bit ornery with one guy, one executive director, because he was not wanting anything to do with a transportation person coming in, and
Huh.
I went online and I pulled his pulled his website up, and I started looking at all the counting all the members, board members, and he was not in compliance. He did not have 51% industry representation. So I'm like, yeah, what the heck? Called him up and I said, I actually emailed him and I copied a bunch of people in so everyone was aware. And I said, hey, I'm just requesting you put this transportation person on your board, or that you get the process started. Oh, and by the way, I'm seeing that your board's not in compliance. And it happened fairly quickly after that.
So before you kind of started getting engaged in the workforce boards and getting other transportation people engaged, was there zero representation of trucking on workforce boards in Oregon?
Correct. I mean, it was kind of so you have your main sectors. Like, you're always going to find healthcare. That's a given. You're going to find a healthcare that's going to be one of the supported and main sectors on almost all workforce boards. And then you're probably a lot of them tend to go with IT. Mm-hmm. You'll see a lot of construction and manufacturing, but very few of them have actually put transportation as a supported main sector. Now that agenda is starting to change. I mean, it's just because people like me getting involved. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, I have attended a handful of meetings here in Oregon with just the executive directors. Now, the executive director of my workforce, he is totally behind transportation and he understands the importance. However, some of his comrades, the other executive directors, they didn't maybe quite see the importance. So Kyle helped me get to some of these meetings, invited me to these meetings to address all the other executive directors. So over time, I've been able to, tell the transportation story to where they're all going, yeah, okay, we get it. Yep, transportation, yeah, we probably better support that because it is important in our area. I mean, you look at Oregon, there's just a lot of, manufacturing is, in the wood business. And so, heck yeah, transportation's important.
Heck yeah. Right. How are they going to get their goods if it's not transported? So has it been worth your time?
Absolutely. It's been worth my time. But just recently, we really, really hit the lottery. Oh, goodness. It was in the fall of 2021. The EDA, the Economic Development Administration, came out with a grant opportunity for every workforce board across the country. And so I collaborating with some of the other workforce boards here in Oregon, I saw what a lot of them were doing. And I mean, they were putting in grants for $25-30 million, and they were trying to get extra money for every one of their supported sectors in their workforce. Well, I went to my executive director and I said, I think making it simple and being, focus on one sector would be better. I said, I would like to, I'd like to submit a grant or a grant opportunity to the EDA for strictly CDL training. But, the driver shortage is not just here in our workforce area. It's across all of Oregon and across all of the U.S. for that matter. So I told my executive director, I said, let's just pick a number. Let's pick a number and say we want to train 325 drivers over the next 2 years under this grant, and let's make it across 3 of the workforce areas that are. So we're going to cover like 7 counties here in southwestern Oregon. So we're doing something a little bit different. I mean, let's make our grant stand out. We're collaborating with the workforce areas, on both sides of us, and so we did. And our grant ask was $3.4 million, and we got awarded. We were the only. There were 32 awards let out on this grant across the United States, and we were one of them. And we were the only one in Oregon. There were 2 in Washington, ours in Oregon, and 2 in California. That was the 5 on the West Coast. So we got $3.4 million to ramp up the CDL training here in southwestern Oregon. And it's really
federal funding that's going directly to CDL training in your state.
And this is up and beyond the funds that I mentioned earlier. So we still have WIOA funds available to us, and we still have, and plus we have in addition this EDA grant award of $3.4 million. And here's something else that's kind of interesting about this EDA grant. So the WIOA funds, when you qualify to get WIOA funds for training, they're very precise on what you can use the money for. So it's got to be strictly for education. There's no support money. So if you're trying to get people to improve their livelihood, maybe they've been working at a minimum wage job and you want to get them into industry. They've got great soft skills. They show up for work. They know how to dress. Something that some people take for granted these days. Mm-hmm. But they've got soft skills and they want to get up and start making a better living. And so truck driving is it. However, they still got to work while they go to school, and it's kind of impossible. They need some support money to help them with gas, help them pay some rent. Well, and that's not available in WIOA funding. You can't do that with WIOA funding. It's strictly for your tuition and your school supplies. However, this grant, when we wrote the grant, we included funding and we included support money of up to $1,000 per student to help them pay those expenses that they need support to get them through the 4 to 5 weeks of the CDL school.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, how has the Oregon Trucking Association been supportive of what you're doing? And are there a lot of state associations that you know of that are involved in their local workforce boards?
I don't know of many at all that are involved in local workforce boards. I will tell you that Oregon Trucking has created a workforce policy committee.
Okay, that's really smart.
So OTA we are a bona fide, committee within the OTA, and all 8 of the individuals I mentioned prior about sitting on the 8 workforce boards across Oregon, all 8 of us are OTA members, and we all sit on that OTA workforce policy committee. So it's, OTA is in the background. They're not really leading the charge. We're kind of leading the charge, but we are organized through the OTA. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's a great way. I mean, that could be a great way for any state to start getting involved in their workforce boards is through their state association, creating one of those committees and getting involved in all the workforce boards and really making those concerted efforts. And we can see it pays off, right? It can pay off with lots of zeros.
I just want to point out, it doesn't happen overnight. And that's the one thing I can't emphasize enough. It's like like I mentioned, I got on this board. It was July of 2015 is when I got appointed to it. And it was agonizing in the early stages, just trying to figure out how it all worked. What's nice, I mean, I've kind of, taken one for the team. And so the other 7 of us, I've been able to help fast track them and get them up to speed on what to do, share my story with them and, the trials and tribulations that I've faced. So it's kind of really helped break down that learning curve. It's kind of flattened it out pretty nicely for all of them.
So if you were talking to another company owner across the country and they wanted to get involved in their local workforce board, what would you say are some of the steps that they need to take?
Well, the first thing I would do is I'd say, so Google up what state you live in.
I live in Kentucky.
Okay, so Google up Kentucky, and I've actually done that. And just Google up Kentucky workforce areas. And see where you sit, see which workforce board you're in or which workforce area that you reside in. And then figure out what the website is, go do some homework on it, find out who the executive director is, find out what sectors they support. They may already be doing it, who knows? Maybe you don't need to really, roll up your sleeves and get engaged with it. But do some research, find out who they are, find out where they're at, pick up the phone and call, the executive director of that board and tell them you're interested in participating. Reach out to your county commissioners, or that's what they call them in Oregon. I'm not sure what they call them in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. but do some research and start digging into it. It doesn't take a lot of time, and all the resources are right there at your fingertips. Just get online and get going.
And is there any other suggestions that you have as an industry leader, really, in your state with both the association and as a part of these workforce boards, and really working on a mission that you firmly believe in? Is there any other suggestions that you want to make to other leaders around the country?
Mm. I think boy, suggestions, Lindsey. I would just say get involved with it. And it may not have to be, the CEO of the company that does it. I mean, if you've got a good HR director or, someone, it really kind of takes somebody with a passion.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, not everybody wants to, I mean, labor has come out, that's kind of the talk. Everyone is short of labor, whether it's truck drivers or, technicians in your shop, whatever. But someone just needs someone within your organization that's got a little bit of time, and it doesn't take a ton of time. I mean, you can get out of it whatever you put into it. I obviously have spent a fair amount of hours doing it, but it's just because it's been interesting to me. It's been like a project. But get involved, do some research, and start making a few calls.
And where do you see like you and your involvement with the workforce boards in the future? Are you going to continue this involvement?
I don't see myself stepping down away from it anytime soon. Now, we're a third generation company. I'm the CEO here at A&M Transport, and I'm not going to be here forever. But as my son, my nephew start just taking more and more of the reins, I eventually will, pass the baton off to them. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. The one thing that we didn't mention, though, Lindsey, is involvement with the ATA, the American Trucking Association, because I actually am the vice chair of the Workforce Policy Committee at ATA. And ATA, they have got some great resources, and ATA is very knowledgeable, across the board on, workforce issues. A gentleman by the name of Nick Gill is the VP, and he's an ATA VP that runs the ATA Workforce Policy Committee, and he is very knowledgeable on the workforce system and a great resource. Chris Spear, the president, CEO of ATA, he is really into the workforce system, understands it, and very supportive as well.
Yeah, I think I heard Chris talk about us getting involved. He at a conference, saying that we needed to get involved in our workforce boards, and they're working on that. And I know Nick, I think he used to work within the workforce board.
He was in the
Department of Labor. Yeah. So they have a lot of knowledge and how to get involved and are really, as an organization as well, pushing transportation, trucking sectors to get involved in their state workforce boards and really trying to make a difference in that way. So we thank you so much, Andy, for being on this show today. And I'm really excited to see how this will hopefully make an impact. If somebody had a question for you, maybe they could contact you about how, you've gone in your local workforce board. Would you be open for them to doing that?
Absolutely. We can post my email address, my phone number, my cell number. I'll talk workforce any time of the day or night. I don't care. I just love talking about workforce.
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate what you've done, the amazing pathways that you are carving. And hopefully other states are going to follow in your path, and other companies to get involved in their workforce boards and really making a difference in people's lives by introducing them to these great careers.
Absolutely.